I need someone to fill the Director of Operations position immediately, my assistant announced, sliding the application across my desk. When I saw his name, the man who walked out on me and our unborn child 5 years ago, my finger hovered over the rejection button. What he didn't know was that the struggling startup he'd abandoned for greater opportunities had transformed into Rivatech Industries, now valued at $8 billion, with me as the CEO and majority shareholder. Let me tell you how I orchestrated the perfect interview for the man who never thought I'd succeed without him. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The corner office on the 38th floor of the Rivatech Tower offered a panoramic view of the city skyline that still took my breath away, even after 3 years of occupying this space. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden glow across the custom mahogany desk that had been a gift to myself when we'd secured our first billion-dollar valuation. My morning ritual remained unchanged regardless of how demanding the day ahead looked. 30 minutes of uninterrupted time to review strategic priorities before the cascade of meetings began. This particular Tuesday morning felt especially significant. We were finalizing acquisition terms for Meridian Systems, a deal that would cement Rivatech's position as the industry leader in supply chain optimization software. Ms. Rivera? My assistant Diane's voice came through the intercom, interrupting. My review of the acquisition documents. Yes, Diane? I responded, slightly annoyed at the disruption of my carefully guarded morning time. I apologize for the interruption, but HR has forwarded an urgent staffing matter. The Director of Operations candidate pool has been narrowed to 5 finalists, and they need your approval to proceed with final interviews. I sighed. The operations director position had been vacant for nearly 2 months, following Marcus Chen's unexpected departure for a competitor. The timing couldn't have been worse with the Meridian acquisition approaching its critical phase. Can it wait until after the Meridian call? They're hoping to schedule interviews for tomorrow. The acquisition timeline is putting pressure on filling this position quickly. Fine. Send the shortlist through. Moments later, Diane entered with a sleek tablet displaying the final candidates' profiles. HR has ranked them based on the criteria you established. They're particularly excited about the candidate with automotive industry experience, given the Meridian focus. I nodded absently, taking the tablet and beginning to scroll through the profiles. The first 3 candidates seemed solid if unexceptional. Experienced operations professionals with relevant backgrounds, but nothing that suggested the innovative thinking we needed for the challenges ahead. The 4th profile made my fingers freeze on the screen. Nathan Whitfield. The name hit me like a physical blow, immediately transporting me 5 years into the past. Images cascaded through my mind. Nathan's face when I told him I was pregnant, the gradual distancing in the weeks that followed, the empty apartment I returned to after a business trip, finding only a note explaining he wasn't ready for this life and had accepted a position abroad. I stared at his professional headshot, the familiar confident smile, now framed by hair sprinkled with distinguished gray at the temples. His resume documented a steady progression through increasingly senior roles at European and Asian manufacturers. The experience was undeniably impressive, culminating in a global operations role that perfectly aligned with our requirements. Ms. Rivera, is everything all right? I realized I'd been staring silently at the screen for too long. Yes, fine, just recognizing a name. I knew this candidate some time ago. Oh? Diane's expression remained professionally neutral, though I detected a flicker of curiosity. Ancient history, I replied, forcing my attention to the 5th candidate to complete the review. Tell HR I'll have feedback by noon. After Diane left, I sat motionless, the tablet still displaying Nathan's profile. The universe had a perverse sense of humor, delivering him to my doorstep at this particular moment, when Rivatech stood on the precipice of industry dominance. 5 years ago, I had been struggling to establish what Nathan had dismissed as my little software project while juggling the reality of unexpected pregnancy. Rivatech wasn't even called that then. It was Rivera Technologies, operating out of my apartment with 3 part-time developers and dwindling seed funding. Nathan had been working for an established automotive components manufacturer, his operations, expertise one of the few stable elements in our chaotic lives. When I secured the meeting with Yamato Motors that could provide our first significant client, Nathan had seemed supportive, helping me prepare my presentation while expressing measured skepticism about whether a major corporation would trust crucial supply chain processes to such a small, unproven venture. The meeting had gone better than expected. Yamato wanted a pilot implementation, but needed me on site in Tokyo for at least 6 weeks to customize the system. I'd returned home elated, already calculating how the contract could fund expansion and proper office space. That's when I discovered I was pregnant. Nathan's initial response had seemed positive, if somewhat reserved. He'd smiled, hugged me, said all the right things. But over the following days, a subtle withdrawal began. Late nights at the office, vague references to career opportunities he was exploring, gradual emotional distancing that I was too preoccupied to fully register as I prepared for both the Tokyo project and impending parenthood. I returned from a 3-day preliminary meeting with Yamato to find the apartment half empty and Nathan's note on the kitchen counter. He'd accepted a position with a German manufacturer, an opportunity too important to pass up that required immediate relocation. The pregnancy had accelerated his timeline, forcing him to make difficult choices about his priorities. He wished me well but was not in a position to commit to family life, and thought it best to make a clean break. The memory of that moment, standing in our apartment holding that coldly pragmatic note while carrying our child, sent a surge of both pain and anger through me even after 5 years. What Nathan couldn't have anticipated was how that abandonment had crystallized something within me. The fury and determination that followed became the foundation upon which I'd built Rivatech's success. The Yamato implementation had been flawless, executed while I was in my 2nd trimester. The resulting case study had opened doors throughout the automotive industry, creating momentum that attracted both clients and venture capital. By the time my daughter Sophia was born, I'd secured Series A funding and established a proper office with 15 employees. Each subsequent year had brought accelerating growth, innovative products, strategic acquisitions, and an IPO that had exceeded even the most optimistic projections. And now, in some cosmic joke, Nathan was applying to work for the company he'd dismissed as a doomed venture when he'd walked away from both it and his unborn child. I picked up the tablet again, studying his application more carefully. His qualifications were genuinely exceptional, precisely the international manufacturing expertise we needed for the post-Meridian integration. HR had ranked him 2nd among the candidates, noting his particular experience with Japanese and European operations as a distinguishing strength. My finger hovered over the screen, tempted to simply delete his application and proceed with the other candidates. It would be the simplest solution, avoiding complications and protecting myself from reopening old wounds. No one would question the decision, CEO's prerogative to reject any candidate without explanation. Yet something stopped me. Perhaps it was curiosity about what had brought him back to the city after all these years. Perhaps it was the professional recognition that his expertise genuinely matched our needs at this critical juncture. Or perhaps, if I were completely honest with myself, it was the undeniable appeal of Nathan discovering exactly what had become of the woman and the company he had so casually discarded. I set the tablet down and walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. Sophia would be finishing her morning kindergarten session now, probably creating another masterpiece in the art corner she loved so much. My daughter had inherited my determination and analytical mind, already showing remarkable focus for a 5-year-old. She had Nathan's eyes, a detail that had sometimes pierced me unexpectedly during her infant years, but had gradually transformed into simply another, beloved aspect of her unique self. Nathan had never seen her, never asked about her, never acknowledged her existence after walking away. The child support checks had started arriving about 8 months after his departure, the minimum legally required, transmitted through his attorney with no accompanying message. I had deposited them into Sophia's education fund without touching. A penny for our living expenses, a matter of personal pride even during the leanest early days of the company. As I turned back toward my desk, my decision crystallized with sudden clarity. I would include Nathan in the interview process, not, despite our history, but because of it. Not as an act of revenge, but as an opportunity to finally close this chapter properly, on my terms rather than his. I picked up the tablet and approved all 5 candidates for final interviews, adding a note requesting that Nathan Whitfield be scheduled as the last candidate of the day. Then I added a specific instruction. I'll conduct the final portion of Mr. Whitfield's interview personally. Please allow 30 minutes for this in the schedule. As I sent the directions to HR, I felt a strange sense of calm purpose. This wasn't about rekindling old pain or executing some elaborate revenge. It was about facing this unexpected intersection of past and present with the same strategic clarity that had built Revatech from a struggling startup into an industry leader. Nathan Whitfield was about to discover exactly what had become of the woman and the company he had abandoned 5 years ago. The realization might be educational for him, but more importantly, handling this situation with professional grace rather than emotional reactivity would represent another step in my own continuing journey of growth and self-determination. I turned my attention back to the Meridian acquisition documents, my focus sharpened rather than diminished by the morning's unexpected development. Whatever personal history lay between Nathan and me, the success of Revatech and the security of the future I was building for Sophia remained my North Star, the principle that had guided every decision since that day I'd stood alone in our half-empty apartment, transforming abandonment into the foundation for unprecedented success. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The 48 hours between Nathan's application and his scheduled interview were among the most productively focused of my professional life. I approached the situation with the same methodical precision that had become my trademark in business. Negotiations, thorough preparation, clear objectives, and a comprehensive understanding of all variables in play. After my initial shock subsided, I conducted a detailed review of Nathan's professional trajectory since our separation. LinkedIn provided the framework, industry contacts filled in details, and our company's relationship with global manufacturers offered unexpected insights into his reputation within the automotive sector. The picture that emerged was illuminating. Nathan had indeed secured a promising position with the German manufacturer, but his tenure there lasted barely 18 months before a lateral move to a French company. This was followed by a similar level transfer to a Japanese firm 2 years later. Then finally, the global operations role he currently held with a Korean manufacturer. The pattern suggested someone climbing not upward, but sideways, maintaining impressive titles, but changing organizations frequently enough to raise questions about performance or fit. My corporate intelligence team, without knowing my personal connection, confirmed this assessment when I requested background on all candidates. Whitfield has impressive international experience, the analyst's report noted, but multiple organizational transitions suggest potential volatility. Former colleagues describe him as technically competent, but politically challenging, often positioned as an outside expert rather than a collaborative leader. This information provided valuable context, but I remained vigilant against allowing past emotions to color my professional assessment. Revatech needed exceptional operations leadership for the Meridian integration. If Nathan genuinely represented the best candidate, Personal history couldn't be the determining factor in our decision. I spent Wednesday evening reviewing the interview, questions the HR team had prepared, adding several specific inquiries about managing cross-cultural integration challenges, an area particularly relevant to both our needs and Nathan's claimed expertise. I deliberately avoided personalizing the process, focusing instead on ensuring our selection criteria would identify the truly best candidate regardless of history. Thursday morning brought an unexpected complication. While reviewing final preparations, for the day's interviews, I received a message from my mother, who kept Sophia on interview days when school schedules didn't align. Sophia's running a fever of 101. Doctor says it's just a virus, but she needs rest. I'm handling everything, but she's asking for you. Don't worry about rushing home. We're managing fine. My mother, who had been my essential support system since Nathan's departure, understood the importance of these interviews. She wouldn't have messaged unless Sophia had specifically requested me. The timing was frustrating. 5 candidates scheduled at 90-minute intervals throughout the day, with Nathan's interview the final appointment at 4:30 p.m. After a moment's consideration, I made a decision that reflected my evolved priorities. I messaged Diane. Need to adjust today's schedule. Move all interviews forward by 30 minutes each. I'll need to leave immediately after the final interview to handle a family matter. This small adjustment, creating efficiency without sacrificing thoroughness, represented the integration of professional responsibilities and personal priorities I had cultivated over 5 years of single parenthood. The early days of building Rivatech while caring for an infant had taught me to optimize rather than sacrifice, to find solutions that honored both aspects of my life rather than placing them in opposition. The first 4 interviews proceeded efficiently throughout the day. I participated in the final evaluation segment for each candidate, maintaining genuine professional interest despite the anticipation building around the day's final appointment. 2 candidates demonstrated particular promise: a former aerospace executive with impressive supply chain credentials and a manufacturing specialist whose experience with Japanese corporate culture would prove valuable in our Yamato relationship. At precisely 4:30 p.m., Diane messaged, "Mr. Whitfield has arrived for his interview. HR team is conducting initial assessment." I focused on reviewing notes from the previous candidates, deliberately channeling my energy into professional evaluation rather than personal anticipation. At 5:15, right on schedule, Diane appeared at my office door. "Mr. Whitfield is ready for the final segment of his interview." The HR team was quite impressed, particularly with his experience managing Japanese-European integration projects. I stood, smoothing the jacket of the tailored navy suit I had deliberately selected that morning. Professional, authoritative, and subtly conveying success without ostentation. "Please show him in." The 45 seconds between Diane's exit and Nathan's entrance were surreal. Time simultaneously compressed and expanded as 5 years of building my company, raising our daughter, and establishing my leadership converged into this unexpected reunion. When he walked through the door, I observed Nathan through the dual lens of personal history and professional assessment. He had aged well, the gray at his temples lending gravitas to his appearance, his posture, reflecting the confidence of someone accustomed to navigational authority in international business settings. He wore a well-tailored charcoal suit that suggested success without flashiness, always his preferred professional style. What he couldn't have anticipated was finding me behind the CEO's desk. His application had been to Rivatech Industries, a company whose connection to Rivera Technologies would not have been obvious without specific industry knowledge. The succession of holding companies and branding evolutions through our growth phases had deliberately maintained separation between my personal identity and the corporate entity. The moment of recognition was instantaneous, his stride faltering. Mid-step, eyes widening slightly before professional composure reasserted itself. To his credit, he recovered quickly, extending his hand with only the briefest hesitation. "Sophia, this is unexpected." I stood, accepting his handshake with professional courtesy, firm, brief, neither avoiding contact nor extending it. Beyond business norms. Nathan, please have a seat. I believe HR has completed the technical assessment portion of your interview. He sat, his composure noticeably recalibrating as he processed this unanticipated situation. Yes, we had a thorough discussion of the operational challenges associated with the rumored Meridian acquisition. I noted his deliberate demonstration of industry knowledge, mentioning the acquisition that had been reported in business publications, but not officially confirmed. A small power move, establishing his preparation and connectedness. Then let's use our time to explore aspects of leadership philosophy and organizational integration, I replied, deliberately steering toward substantive, business discussion rather than acknowledging our shared past. Revatech's growth has been built on specific cultural principles, particularly around collaborative innovation and long-term commitment to both people and strategies. Something in my emphasis on long-term commitment registered in his expression, though his response remained professionally focused. I've been particularly impressed by Revatech's retention rates, nearly unheard of in tech sectors. My experience integrating diverse organizational cultures would be directly applicable to maintaining that strength through the acquisition process. For the next 20 minutes, we engaged in what externally appeared to be a standard executive interview, discussing operational methodologies, integration challenges, and leadership approaches. The conversation was substantive and professionally relevant, with Nathan demonstrating genuine expertise in cross-cultural manufacturing operations. Beneath this conventional exchange, however, ran currents of unspoken history, subtle references. In my questions to commitment and follow-through, Nathan's careful emphasis on growth and evolution as professional values. We conducted an intricate dance of subtext beneath business-like evaluation. With 10 minutes remaining in our scheduled time, I shifted the conversation toward closure. Your technical qualifications are certainly strong, Nathan. Before we conclude, I'm curious. What specifically attracted you to Revatech at this juncture in your career? The question was standard interview fare, but in our context carried additional weight. His response would reveal what research he had done before applying, whether he had known I was connected to the company, and how he would navigate our personal history within a professional context. His answer was measured. Truthfully, I was drawn by Revatech's reputation for innovation in supply chain optimization, particularly the Yamato implementation that transformed automotive distribution models. That project demonstrated vision beyond conventional approaches. He paused, then added with careful neutrality, I wasn't aware of your connection to the company until today. The corporate evolution from Rivera Technologies wasn't immediately apparent in my research. I nodded, accepting his explanation without revealing whether I found it credible. The Yamato implementation was indeed a pivotal moment for the company. It established our methodology when we were still quite small. I remember your excitement about that initial meeting, he offered, the first direct acknowledgement of our shared past. You saw possibilities others missed. Something in his tone, a hint of retrospective recognition rather than condescension, triggered memories of those early days when I had enthusiastically outlined my vision for transforming supply chain management, while he listened with what I had interpreted as supportive interest. Before the pregnancy, before the abandonment, during the brief period when we had functioned as partners, navigating complementary professional paths. I allowed myself 3 seconds of silence, not from emotional disruption, but strategic consideration of how to acknowledge this reference without derailing the professional context of our interaction. The Yamato project proved more transformative than anyone anticipated, I replied finally. Sometimes the full potential of situations becomes visible only in retrospect. The statement applied equally to the business opportunity and our personal history. An intentional ambiguity that maintained professional boundaries while acknowledging the elephants in the room. Nathan held my gaze with a complexity of expression that suggested he understood both levels of meaning. That's been my experience as well. Before the moment could extend into uncomfortable territory, I glanced at my watch, a genuine reminder of my commitment to Sophia rather than an interview technique. Our time is nearly up, and I have a personal commitment this evening. The HR team will be in contact with all candidates early next week regarding next steps. I stood, signaling the interview's conclusion. Do you have any final questions? About the position or Rivitech's expectations? He rose as well, professional demeanor fully restored. Just one. This role requires close collaboration with the CEO on strategic initiatives. Given our prior association, would that present complications you'd prefer to avoid? The question was surprisingly direct, acknowledging our history, while framing it as a legitimate business consideration, rather than a personal matter. It demonstrated both professional maturity and a certain courage I hadn't anticipated. Rivitech makes personnel decisions based on organizational needs and candidate qualifications, I replied with equal directness. Historical connections, professional or personal, are relevant only insofar as they impact current performance capacity. I maintained steady eye contact as I continued. The question isn't whether prior association exists, but whether all parties can engage with appropriate professional boundaries and focus on company objectives rather than personal history. He nodded, accepting both the explicit answer and its implicit challenge. Understood and appreciated. As we concluded the interview with standard professional courtesies, I maintained the poised exterior that had become my hallmark in business. Negotiations, calm, controlled, and focused on strategic objectives rather than emotional currents. Only after Nathan had departed and I was gathering my belongings to visit my sick daughter did I allow myself to acknowledge the emotional complexity of the encounter. What surprised me most wasn't the competent professional Nathan had become, or the lingering memories his presence had evoked. It was my own response, the realization that while seeing him had indeed triggered echoes of old pain, those echoes no longer carried their original power. The woman he had abandoned no longer existed, transformed through challenge and growth into someone stronger and more complete than the person he had known. As I left the office to rush to Sophia, I recognized that the day's true revelation had nothing to do with Nathan at all. It was the confirmation that the journey of the past 5 years had been not just about building a successful company, but about becoming a woman who could face her past without being diminished by it, who could evaluate a former partner with professional clarity rather than emotional reactivity, who had transformed abandonment into the foundation for a life more purposeful and substantial than the one that had been disrupted. Whatever decision we ultimately made about Nathan's candidacy would be based on business criteria rather than personal history. A freedom that represented perhaps the most meaningful measure of how far I had come since standing alone in that half-empty apartment 5 years before. The weekend following Nathan's interview provided no respite from the questions his unexpected reappearance had raised. Sophia's virus had developed into a persistent cough that demanded my attention throughout Saturday, creating a strange juxtaposition of past and present, caring for the child Nathan had never met while processing the implications of his potential, returned to my professional sphere. By Sunday afternoon, Sophia's fever had broken. As she napped peacefully on the living room sofa, I finally had mental space to properly evaluate the situation. Moving to my home office, I reviewed the detailed notes HR had compiled on all 5 candidates, determined to approach the decision with rigorous objectivity rather than emotional reaction. The evaluation matrix our team had developed assessed candidates across 8 critical dimensions: technical expertise, leadership capacity, cross-cultural fluency, change management experience, strategic thinking, team development history, ethical, decision-making, and cultural fit with Rivitech's collaborative model. Each dimension was weighted according to its importance for successfully integrating the Meridian acquisition. According to the quantitative assessment, Nathan ranked second, Among the 5 candidates, scoring particularly high on technical expertise and cross-cultural fluency. The aerospace executive, Katherine Jennings, maintained a slight lead primarily due to superior scores in team development and cultural alignment. I studied the evaluation comments without allowing Nathan's name to influence my interpretation. The HR team had noted his impressive command of global manufacturing processes and particularly praised his insights regarding Japanese-European integration challenges, expertise directly relevant to our immediate needs. His responses to case scenarios had demonstrated analytical precision and pragmatic problem-solving. The notes also documented concerns. Candidate emphasizes technical solutions over people-centered approaches and describes past accomplishments. Individually, rather than highlighting team contributions, pointed to potential alignment issues with Rivatech's collaborative culture. These observations aligned with my own impression from the interview. Nathan remained the competent but individually focused operator I had known, someone who approached problems through systems rather than relationships. As I considered these assessments, my phone chimed with a message from Elise Yamato, daughter of Yamato Motors' CEO and now their Chief Innovation Officer. Over the years, our initial business relationship had evolved into genuine friendship, with Elise becoming both a trusted advisor and confidant. Heard through industry channels that Nathan Whitfield is interviewing with Rivatech, worked with him on European distribution optimization during his Quan Motors period. Technical skills exceptional, but left abruptly mid-implementation, timing sensitive for us, worth discussing before decisions. This message introduced another critical perspective. Yamato remained our most significant client relationship, the foundation upon which we had built our reputation for transformative supply chain solutions. Any potential disruption to that relationship carried implications far beyond a single executive hire. I immediately scheduled a confidential video call with Elise for that evening, after Sophia's bedtime. Her insights would provide crucial context from someone who had worked directly with Nathan in his most recent role. Information that wouldn't appear in reference checks or performance evaluations. The call with Elise began with personal updates. Her daughter was just entering middle school, creating new parenting challenges we compared with warm familiarity. But when the conversation turned to Nathan, her typically expressive face became carefully neutral. I was surprised to see his application. "Cross my desk," I acknowledged, opening the discussion without revealing our personal history. "His qualifications match our needs for the Meridian integration, but I value your perspective on his work with Yamato." Elise considered her response with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Nathan is undeniably brilliant with systems integration. The distribution model he developed for our European operations generated efficiencies beyond our projections." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. But his departure created significant challenges. He left precisely when implementation required relationship management across our European subsidiaries, with no transition period and limited documentation. "Was there a specific catalyst for his departure?" I asked, maintaining professional framing rather than personal curiosity. He received an offer from Quan that supposedly represented significant advancement. From our perspective, the timing suggested he preferred designing systems to implementing them, particularly when implementation required navigating complex organizational dynamics rather than solving technical problems. This pattern, pursuing new opportunities at precisely the moment when relationship management became more important than technical design, resonated uncomfortably with my personal experience. Nathan had walked away from our relationship when pregnancy had transformed it from a comfortable partnership into a complex emotional commitment, requiring sustained presence through challenging circumstances. How would Yamato respond if he were appointed to lead our operations, given that history? I asked, addressing the practical business implications. "Our technical teams would welcome his expertise," Elise replied diplomatically. "Senior leadership might require reassurance regarding commitment to implementation continuity." She hesitated before adding, Sophia, speaking as your friend rather than a client, his departure created significant disruption. We recovered, but it required resources and relationship repair that could have been avoided with proper transition. After thanking Elise for her candor, I ended the call with much to consider. The pattern emerging across Nathan's professional transitions paralleled my personal experience with troubling consistency. Initial engagement and genuine contribution, followed by abrupt departure when situations required sustained commitment, through complex interpersonal challenges. This insight clarified that my reservations about Nathan's candidacy weren't merely emotional residue from our personal history, but legitimate concerns about behavioral patterns that could impact Revitech's operations and client relationships. The question wasn't whether Nathan possessed the technical qualifications for the role. He clearly did. But whether his demonstrated pattern of engagement and departure aligned with our company's values and operational needs. Monday mornings, Executive Committee meeting began with standard updates on the Meridian acquisition timeline before moving to the Operations Director decision. As I presented the candidate assessments, I maintained strict professional focus, describing Nathan with the same objective language used for all candidates. The personal dimension remained private, unnecessary context for a business decision that needed to stand on operational merits. Based on comprehensive evaluation, I recommend we extend an offer to Catherine Jennings, I concluded, referencing the aerospace executive whose scores had topped our assessment matrix. While Whitfield's technical qualifications are exemplary, Jennings demonstrates superior alignment with our collaborative implementation methodology and relationship-centered leadership approach. Marcus Chen, our departing operations director who was participating in his replacement selection, nodded approval. Jennings impressed me with her questions about team composition and development. She was already thinking about how to build on existing strengths rather than imposing new systems. The recommendation was approved without controversy, the decision documented as resulting from standard evaluation criteria rather than any personal considerations. I instructed HR to proceed with background verification for Jennings while preparing appropriate communications for the candidates not selected. That afternoon, I faced the question of how to handle Nathan's rejection notification. Standard protocol would delegate this to HR, particularly given our personal history. The professionally prudent approach would be maintaining separation, avoiding unnecessary direct interaction that could be misconstrued. Yet something about this solution felt incomplete, an avoidance rather than a resolution. After careful consideration, I made a decision that reflected my evolution from the woman Nathan had abandoned 5 years earlier to the leader I had become. I'll handle the communication with Mr. Whitfield personally, I informed our HR director. Given his specific expertise and industry connections, I want to ensure the relationship remains positive, even though we're moving in a different direction. This explanation, professionally sound without revealing personal history, preserved both appropriate boundaries and my autonomy in deciding how to navigate this intersection of past and present. I would close this chapter properly, without delegation or avoidance, from a position of composed strength rather than emotional reactivity. I scheduled a brief video call rather than relying on impersonal email, balancing professional courtesy with appropriate boundaries. When Nathan's face appeared on the screen that afternoon, his expression suggested he had anticipated the outcome. "Thank you for making time for this call," I began, maintaining the professional tone that had characterized our interview. "I wanted to personally inform you that while your qualifications are impressive, we've decided to proceed with another candidate whose leadership approach more closely aligns with Revitech's collaborative implementation methodology." He nodded, professional composure intact. "I appreciate the personal notification. May I ask what specific aspects of my approach didn't align with your requirements? For professional development purposes." The question was legitimate and professionally framed. After brief consideration, I decided that constructive feedback served both business interests and personal closure, demonstrating that my decision stemmed from substantive evaluation rather than personal history. Your technical expertise is exceptional, particularly regarding cross-cultural systems integration, I acknowledged. Our concerns centered on implementation approach, specifically sustainable engagement through relationship-intensive phases of organizational change. Your pattern of organizational transitions suggested potential misalignment with our emphasis on continuity through complex implementation cycles. Something in his expression shifted, recognition that my assessment encompassed more than our interview, perhaps even awareness that the pattern I had identified professionally paralleled our personal history. That's perceptive feedback, he replied after a measured pause, and not entirely unfounded. I've traditionally focused on design and initial implementation phases where technical solutions drive progress. Those are valuable strengths in the right context, I responded, neither dismissive nor apologetic. Rivitech's model emphasizes sustained partnership through full implementation cycles, which requires different priorities and commitments. He nodded, then added with unexpected directness, I imagine our history made this evaluation particularly complex. I had anticipated this possibility and prepared a response that honored the reality without allowing it to dominate the professional interaction. All candidates were evaluated through consistent criteria, focused on current capabilities and organizational alignment. Historical context, professional or personal, informed my understanding of established patterns relevant to position requirements, nothing more. This answer was neither evasion nor complete transparency. It acknowledged the relevance of our history to legitimate business considerations without transforming a professional decision into a personal statement. Nathan seemed to recognize both what was said and what remained unspoken. I understand. For what it's worth, seeing what you've built with Rivitech is impressive. The vision you described years ago has clearly manifested beyond what either of us might have anticipated. Thank you, I replied, accepting the acknowledgement without elaboration. I wish you success in your professional endeavors, Nathan. As I concluded the call with standard professional courtesies, I realized the interaction had provided something I hadn't consciously sought, but nevertheless valued. The opportunity to engage with this fragment of my past from a position of composed strength and clear purpose, neither avoiding its significance nor allowing it to disrupt my professional judgment. The decision to reject Nathan's candidacy hadn't been about punishing past abandonment or protecting myself from painful history. It represented legitimate business judgment based on observed patterns and organizational needs. That this judgment, aligned with personal insights about Nathan's character, reflected integration rather than confusion of professional and personal dimensions, the accumulated wisdom that informed all aspects of my leadership. As I turned my attention to finalizing Catherine Jennings' offer package, I realized that Nathan's unexpected reappearance had provided an opportunity to demonstrate, primarily to myself, just how completely I had transformed adversity into advancement, abandonment into self-sufficiency, and personal disappointment into professional discernment. The woman who had once stood alone in a half-empty apartment, simultaneously pregnant and betrayed, had become a leader capable of evaluating her former partner with clear-eyed assessment rather than emotional reactivity, capable of recognizing patterns without being defined by the pain they had once caused. This evolution represented not just professional success, but personal integration, perhaps the most meaningful measure of the journey I had traveled in the 5 years since Nathan's departure. 2 weeks after concluding the operations director, search, Rivitech's acquisition of Meridian Systems dominated my professional attention. Catherine Jennings had accepted our offer and was already demonstrating the collaborative leadership style that had distinguished her candidacy, engaging thoughtfully with both teams to identify integration priorities and potential friction points. The Nathan Whitfield episode had receded from immediate focus. a momentary intersection of past and present that had been navigated successfully and now belonged to history rather than current concerns. Or so I believed until Diane informed me of an unscheduled visitor late Thursday afternoon. "Nathan Whitfield is in reception," she reported with professional neutrality that couldn't quite mask her curiosity. "He doesn't have an appointment, but asked if you might have 10 minutes to discuss a business proposition. He emphasized it's not regarding employment, but a potential strategic opportunity." My initial instinct was to decline. We had concluded our professional interaction appropriately, and reopening communication served no obvious business purpose. Yet something about the specificity of his request, a strategic opportunity rather than personal connection, triggered my professional curiosity. "I can give him 10 minutes between my budget review and the board prep call," I decided. "Please show him in at 4:15 and make it clear the time constraint is firm." When Nathan entered my office, his demeanor was noticeably different from our interview, less the polished executive candidate than a focused business professional with a specific objective. He carried a slim presentation portfolio and declined the offered seat, suggesting he intended to respect the time limitation. "Thank you for seeing me without an appointment," he began. "I'll be direct. I'm here representing Quantum Mobility, not seeking to revisit our previous conversation." The name registered immediately. Quantum Mobility was a European autonomous vehicle developer whose breakthrough navigation systems had generated significant industry attention. Their technology potentially represented a critical missing element in Rivatech's expanding transportation optimization portfolio. "You've joined Quantum?" I asked, professional interest overriding personal history. Our intelligence had indicated they were seeking senior operations leadership, but Nathan's connection hadn't appeared in our monitoring. "Not exactly," he replied. "I've been consulting on their manufacturing scalability challenges while considering next steps after Quan Motors. During that process, I identified a potential strategic alignment between Quantum's navigation technology and Rivatech's supply chain optimization systems that neither organization has recognized independently." He opened his portfolio, revealing concise slides illustrating the technical compatibility between Quantum's autonomous routing algorithms and Rivatech's dynamic supply chain optimization platform. The analysis was impressively substantive, demonstrating both deep understanding of our technology and creative vision for integration possibilities that indeed hadn't appeared in our strategic planning. This integration could enable predictive resource positioning that anticipates demand fluctuations 60% more accurately than current methodologies, he explained, highlighting key metrics with precision that reflected genuine technical insight, rather than speculative projection. Neither company has the complete capability independently, but together could establish definitive advantage in autonomous supply chain management. The business proposition was legitimately compelling, representing potential strategic value entirely separate from our personal history. As Nathan continued outlining specific technical complementarities and market positioning advantages, I found myself engaged with the content rather than the complicated context of our interaction. Quantum's leadership has authorized me to facilitate an initial conversation about potential collaboration models, he concluded. "They're unaware of our previous association. This recommendation is based entirely on technical complementarity analysis I conducted independently." The proposition created an interesting dilemma. The strategic opportunity appeared genuinely valuable, potentially accelerating Rivatech's autonomous logistics capabilities by 12 to 18 months compared to internal development timelines. Yet pursuing it would necessarily involve ongoing interaction with Nathan in some capacity, complexity I had not anticipated reintroducing. "The technical alignment you've identified is intriguing," I acknowledged, maintaining professional focus. "What exactly are you proposing as next steps? And what would your role be in any potential collaboration?" "I've prepared a preliminary integration framework for technical teams to evaluate, With no obligation beyond initial assessment, he explained, removing a sealed envelope from his portfolio. Regarding my involvement, that's entirely at your discretion. I could simply make the introduction and step away, or facilitate technical discussions if that would add value. My priority is seeing these complementary technologies properly integrated for market advantage. The implementation structure is secondary. The response demonstrated unexpected self-awareness, acknowledging the potential complication of his involvement while prioritizing the strategic opportunity over personal positioning. This maturity hadn't been evident in our previous professional interactions, suggesting genuine evolution in his approach. After thoughtful consideration, I made a decision based on business logic rather than personal history. Our technical team will evaluate the framework you've developed. If the opportunity proves as substantial as your analysis suggests, we'll determine appropriate next steps regarding quantum engagement. Diane will contact you once our assessment is complete. Nathan nodded, handing over the sealed envelope without attempting to extend the conversation. Thank you for considering the proposition objectively, despite our complicated history. The technical potential deserves evaluation on its merits alone. As he turned to leave, professional interaction concluded within the promised time parameters. I found myself asking a question that bridged professional and personal domains. Why bring this to Revatech specifically, Nathan? There are multiple supply chain optimization companies who could partner with Quantum. He paused at the door, considering the question with evident care. 3 reasons. First, Revatech's architecture is genuinely the most compatible with Quantum's systems. The integration would require minimal structural modification compared to alternatives. Second, your company's implementation methodology creates higher probability of successful market deployment than competitors with superior technical specifications but inferior execution models. He hesitated before continuing. And third, I've observed Revatech's evolution from concept to market leader. Bringing this opportunity here feels like completing a connection that should exist, independent of personal considerations. The technology alignment is objectively exceptional. The response demonstrated thoughtful integration of technical assessment and philosophical perspective without inappropriate personal overtones, perhaps the most mature interaction we had ever shared. I appreciate the professional assessment, I replied, maintaining the dignified boundaries that had characterized our recent interactions. We'll evaluate the opportunity accordingly. After Nathan's departure, I immediately requested our Chief Technology Officer conduct expedited assessment of the integration framework he had provided. 2 days later, the evaluation confirmed Nathan's analysis. The technological complementarity between Revatech and Quantum indeed represented potentially transformative market opportunity, with integration pathways more straightforward than typically encountered in such partnerships. This validation created legitimate business rationale for pursuing the connection, requiring careful consideration of how to manage the personal complexity without sacrificing strategic advantage. After reviewing options with my executive team, without disclosing personal history, we determined that initial exploration with Quantum would proceed through standard channels, with Nathan's involvement limited to technical consultation rather than relationship management. The following Tuesday, I participated in the initial video conference with Quantum's leadership team. Nathan was present but appropriately positioned as technical advisor rather than central facilitator, contributing substantive insights while maintaining professional distance. The discussion confirmed mutual interest in exploring strategic partnership, establishing working groups to evaluate integration pathways and business models. As the meeting concluded with clear next steps established, Quantum's CEO noted with evident curiosity. Nathan mentioned he had previous professional interaction with Revatech, which helped him recognize the technical complementarity. We're fortunate he identified this potential connection. The comment created brief tension, an implicit question about relationships Nathan and I had independently chosen not to highlight. After momentary consideration, I responded with measured precision. Our organizations have different strengths, but compatible visions for autonomous supply chain evolution. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from individuals with perspective across multiple technical ecosystems. This response, factually accurate while maintaining appropriate boundaries, seemed to satisfy the question without inviting unnecessary elaboration. The meeting concluded with established protocols for continuing exploration, technical teams energized by the integration possibilities. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected email from Nathan. Sophia, now that initial connection between the Revatech and Quantum has been established, I've recommended they assign a different technical liaison for ongoing discussions. This transition will ensure the strategic opportunity proceeds based entirely on business merit without unnecessary complications. The technology alignment remains exceptional regardless of who facilitates its development. I've accepted a permanent position with Quantum beginning next month, focusing on manufacturing operations in their Barcelona facility, geographically and functionally removed from the Revatech integration if it proceeds. My involvement in identifying the opportunity was professionally satisfying, but its successful implementation doesn't require my continued participation. While circumstances don't permit proper resolution of our personal history, I hope this professional interaction demonstrated respect for the remarkable organization you've built and recognition of your exceptional leadership in bringing your vision to reality. Regards, Nathan. The message represented the most emotionally mature communication we had ever shared, acknowledging the complexity of our history without attempting to resolve it inappropriately, prioritizing business opportunity over personal positioning, and removing himself from ongoing interaction that might create unnecessary complications. After careful consideration, I responded with equal professionalism. Nathan, your recommendation regarding transition of technical liaison responsibilities demonstrates appropriate prioritization of the strategic opportunity over individual involvement. Revatech appreciates your initiating this potential collaboration based on substantive technical assessment. I wish you success in your new position with Quantum. The connection you've identified between our organizations has genuine strategic potential that deserves thorough exploration independent of its origins. Regards, Sophia. This exchange, brief, professional, and bounded, provided unexpected closure to what had begun as an awkward intersection of past and present. Nathan had demonstrated growth I hadn't anticipated, recognizing appropriate boundaries and prioritizing business value over personal history. While not erasing the past, this maturity allowed the potential collaboration to proceed without unnecessary complexity. The following week brought final confirmation of the Meridian acquisition closing and Catherine Jennings' formal introduction as operations director. During the integration planning session, I found myself reflecting on how completely the organization had evolved from the struggling startup Nathan had dismissed 5 years earlier. The leadership team surrounding me represented world-class talent across diverse disciplines, united by shared commitment to transforming supply chain management through innovative technology and collaborative implementation methodologies. This transformation had occurred not despite the challenges I had faced: single parenthood, limited initial resources, skeptical industry reception, but partially because of them. Those obstacles had required developing resilience, creativity, and collaborative leadership that had become Revatech's defining characteristics. The company's success reflected not just technical innovation, but the distinctive culture of determined excellence that had emerged from necessity. As the session concluded with clear direction established for integrating Meridian's capabilities, I realized that Nathan's unexpected reappearance had provided valuable perspective on the complete journey, from abandoned entrepreneur to industry-leading CEO, from struggling startup to market-defining enterprise. The contrast between where I had started and where I now stood couldn't have been more dramatic or satisfying. That evening, as I helped Sophia with her kindergarten science project, building a model watershed system that demonstrated her early interest in environmental processes. I appreciated how completely we had constructed a life of meaning and possibility from circumstances that had once seemed so precarious. My daughter was thriving in an environment of stability and opportunity I had created through persistent determination and strategic growth, surrounded by a supportive community that had developed organically around our journey. Nathan's brief re-entry into this carefully constructed life had initially seemed a potential disruption. Instead, it had ultimately provided confirmation of how thoroughly we had transcended those early challenges, how completely abandonment had been transformed into self-sufficiency, disappointment into determination, and adversity into extraordinary achievement. The strategic opportunity he had identified would proceed based on business merit rather than personal history, potentially creating significant value for Rivatech while maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. This resolution represented perhaps the most meaningful measure of my evolution, the capacity to evaluate opportunities objectively regardless of their source, to engage with complicated history from a position of composed strength rather than emotional reactivity. As Sophia carefully explained how water moved through her model watershed, her expression reflected the focused determination she had inherited from me, the capacity to engage fully with challenges rather than being intimidated by their complexity. This quality had carried me from that moment of abandoned pregnancy to industry leadership, from solitary determination to collaborative vision that was transforming an entire industry. Nathan's unexpected return had provided one final gift, perspective, on the remarkable journey that had unfolded in the 5 years since his departure. What had begun as seemingly insurmountable challenge had become the foundation for unprecedented achievement and meaningful purpose, demonstrating how completely adversity could be transformed when approached with unwavering determination and strategic vision. The woman who had once stood alone in a half-empty apartment had become a leader whose decisions shaped industry evolution, whose vision inspired global implementation, and whose example demonstrated that true success comes not from avoiding obstacles but from transforming them into the very foundation of exceptional achievement. The Quantum Mobility Partnership progressed with remarkable efficiency over the following months. Our technical teams established strong collaborative relationships, identifying integration pathways that exceeded initial projections for both timeline and functionality. As Nathan had suggested, the complementary technologies created synergies neither organization had previously recognized, potentially establishing new industry standards for autonomous supply chain management. By early September, 6 months after the initial connection, we had developed a working prototype that demonstrated the integrated system's capabilities. The results were compelling enough to justify accelerated investment, with both companies' boards approving expanded resources for joint development. We were preparing for limited market testing when an unexpected development altered the landscape. Axiom Technologies has made an acquisition offer for Quantum, reported Marcus Way, our Chief Strategy Officer, during our Monday executive meeting. The proposed terms suggest they recognize the potential of our partnership and are attempting to secure Quantum's technology before our integration reaches market. Axiom was our most significant competitor, a larger, more established company that had been struggling to develop comparable autonomous logistics capabilities. Their move represented both validation of our strategic direction and potential threat to the competitive advantage we were establishing. "Do we have information on Quantum's response?" I asked, immediately recognizing the strategic implications. "Their board is divided," Marcus explained. "The venture capital investors see attractive financial returns in Axiom's offer. The founding team prefers continuing independence and partnership with Rivatech, believing the long-term potential exceeds Axiom's valuation. They're seeking alternatives to outright acquisition." This development created complex strategic considerations. If Axiom acquired Quantum, the partnership we had been developing would likely dissolve, with our competitor gaining exclusive access to the complementary technology. Yet, Rivatech wasn't positioned for a competitive counter-acquisition offer, having committed significant resources to the Meridian integration. What options might satisfy Quantum's investors while preserving our strategic partnership? I asked, focusing on constructive alternatives rather than potential threats. The discussion explored various approaches: minority investment positions, exclusive licensing arrangements, joint venture structures, each with different implications for control, resource requirements, and strategic flexibility. By meeting's end, we had identified 3 potential frameworks that might offer Quantum's investors satisfactory returns while maintaining the partnership's strategic value. I'll need to discuss these concepts directly with Quantum's leadership, I concluded. Their perspective on acceptable structures will determine our viable options. Later that afternoon, I arranged a confidential video conference with Adrienne Carvalho, Quantum's CEO. Our working relationship had developed strong mutual respect over the months of collaboration, creating foundation for candid discussion of this sensitive situation. The Axiom offer has created significant boardroom tension, Adrienne acknowledged after we exchanged greetings. Our investors see attractive returns in selling now. The founding team believes our partnership has greater long-term potential. What would resolve that tension? I asked directly. We've identified several potential frameworks that might satisfy financial expectations while preserving our strategic collaboration. Adrienne considered the question thoughtfully. The fundamental issue is timeline misalignment. Venture investors want liquidity within specific windows. They recognize our technology's value, but aren't structured to retain long-term positions, regardless of potential. Either they need near-term returns or convincing evidence that waiting would yield substantially greater value within their investment horizons. This insight clarified the challenge, not merely finding the right structure, but addressing the fundamental timing mismatch between financial investors and strategic development. As we discussed specific requirements, one critical fact emerged. Quantum's Barcelona manufacturing facility represented their largest physical asset, but was underutilized given current production volumes. The facility's carrying costs significantly impacted Quantum's financial position, creating pressure to accept Axiom's offer despite strategic reservations. When our conversation concluded, I had clearer understanding of both the constraints and possibilities. Quantum needed financial restructuring that would satisfy investor liquidity requirements while maintaining the strategic partnership's momentum. The Barcelona facility represented both burden and opportunity, depending on perspective. That evening, I found myself remembering a detail from Nathan's final email. He had accepted a position managing Quantum's Barcelona manufacturing operations. Though our communication had appropriately ceased following his transition away from me, the partnership liaison role, his unique knowledge of both organizations created potential value in addressing the current challenge. After careful consideration, I drafted a precisely framed email. Nathan, Rivatech has been informed of Axiom's acquisition offer for Quantum and understands the board dynamics it has created. We're exploring alternative structures that might satisfy investor liquidity requirements while preserving the strategic partnership our teams have developed. Given your position overseeing Barcelona operations and familiarity with both organizations, your perspective might provide valuable insight regarding viable approaches. If appropriate within your current role, I would appreciate a brief consultation focused specifically on manufacturing integration possibilities that might address Quantum's current constraints. This would be strictly professional engagement limited to specific strategic considerations where your unique cross-organizational knowledge might prove valuable. Regards, Sophia. The message maintained appropriate professional boundaries while acknowledging the potential value of his particular perspective in this specific situation. I was neither seeking to re-establish ongoing communication nor avoiding potentially valuable input due to personal history. simply pursuing all available information that might help navigate a complex strategic challenge. Nathan's response arrived early the following morning. Sophia, I've been directly involved in analyzing options regarding Axiom's offer from manufacturing operations perspective. You've correctly identified that Barcelona facility considerations significantly impact Quantum's current position. I can provide relevant insights within appropriate professional parameters. The facility's capacity substantially exceeds Quantum's current requirements, creating financial burden that influences investor perspectives on the Axiom offer. However, its capabilities align precisely with potential integrated production requirements for the Rivatech partnership technologies. If helpful, I've prepared an analysis of potential manufacturing integration approaches that might address this specific aspect of the current situation. This information might prove valuable in developing alternatives to Axiom's offer. Let me know if this would be useful contribution to your strategic assessment. Regards, Nathan. The response maintained the same professional focus, acknowledging the potential value of specific information while respecting appropriate boundaries. After consulting with our Chief Operations Officer to confirm the potential relevance of such analysis, I requested the information Nathan had offered. The manufacturing integration framework he provided proved remarkably insightful, identifying specific approaches through which Rivatech could utilize Quantum's excess Barcelona capacity for producing integrated systems, potentially transforming an underperforming asset into strategic advantage. The analysis demonstrated sophisticated understanding of both companies' needs and capabilities, offering concrete approaches rather than theoretical possibilities. This information catalyzed innovative thinking among our strategic planning team. Over the following week, we developed a comprehensive proposal for Quantum that addressed both their financial constraints and strategic objectives. Rivatech would acquire the Barcelona facility while establishing a long-term manufacturing partnership for the integrated technologies, providing immediate liquidity for Quantum's investors while preserving the strategic collaboration's momentum. The structure would enable Quantum to reduce operating costs while maintaining production capacity for the partnership technologies, creating financial flexibility that might enable rejecting Axiom's complete acquisition offer. Rather than competing with Axiom's bid directly, we were offering complementary restructuring that addressed the underlying pressures without requiring Quantum's complete absorption. When I presented this concept to Adrienne, her response was immediately positive. This addresses our fundamental constraint, Barcelona's overhead impact on our financial position, while preserving the strategic partnership's potential. Our investors would receive partial liquidity while maintaining upside exposure to the technology's market development. Would this create implementation challenges given your current Barcelona leadership? I asked, acknowledging without directly referencing Nathan's position. On the contrary, Adrienne replied, Nathan Whitfield has been advocating for precisely this type of manufacturing rationalization since joining us. His operational assessment highlighted Barcelona's potential. As a dedicated production facility for the integrated systems, he would be the ideal transition leader if we pursued this approach. This information was enlightening but potentially complicated. The proposed structure would necessarily involve ongoing professional interaction with Nathan in his role managing the facility Rivatech would acquire. Before proceeding, I needed to ensure this arrangement would function effectively without personal history creating operational friction. After careful consideration, I scheduled a video conference with Nathan specifically focused on implementation considerations. When his face appeared on the screen, his expression was professionally attentive without personal presumption. Thank you for the manufacturing integration analysis, I began, establishing clear professional context. It provided valuable perspective that has shaped our proposal to Quantum. Before proceeding, I want to ensure the potential implementation approach would function effectively given our particular circumstances. Nathan nodded with evident understanding of the subtext. I anticipated this consideration. If Rivatec acquires the Barcelona facility, my role would necessarily involve regular interaction with your operations team. That raises legitimate questions about whether our history might complicate effective collaboration. Precisely, I acknowledged, appreciating the direct engagement with the underlying concern. My responsibility is ensuring any arrangement serves Rivatec's strategic interests without unnecessary complications. I've given this considerable thought, Nathan replied. My professional recommendation would be a transitional role. I would lead initial integration and knowledge transfer for approximately 6 months, while Rivatec identifies permanent leadership. This approach utilizes my facility knowledge and implementation experience while establishing appropriate long-term structure. The proposal demonstrated mature recognition of both the value his expertise could provide and the potential complications of permanent interconnection. It represented thoughtful balance of professional contribution and appropriate boundaries. That approach seems both practically sound and appropriately structured, I acknowledged. If we proceed with this framework, could you commit to that? Transitional timeline and professional parameters? Without reservation, he confirmed. My priority is seeing this technology reach its potential through the partnership our teams have developed. Personal considerations are entirely secondary to that professional objective. This exchange, straightforward, mature, and focused on practical implementation rather than emotional complexity, provided necessary confidence that the proposed structure could function effectively despite our complicated history. The transitional approach Nathan had suggested represented pragmatic solution that utilized his expertise while establishing appropriate long-term separation. With this implementation concern addressed, we proceeded to formalize the proposal. Over the following weeks, intensive negotiations refined the structure into definitive agreements. Rivatec would acquire Quantum's Barcelona facility, establishing dedicated manufacturing capacity for the integrated technologies while providing Quantum's investors partial liquidity. The remaining company would continue as independent entity focused on technology development, maintaining strategic partnership with Rivatec through long-term agreements that specified development priorities and market deployment approaches. When Quantum's board voted to accept our proposal rather than Axiom's acquisition offer, the decision represented substantial strategic victory. We had preserved the partnership's potential while addressing the financial constraints that had created vulnerability to hostile acquisition. The integrated technology pathway remained intact, with accelerated timeline for market deployment given the dedicated manufacturing capacity we had secured. The subsequent implementation process proceeded with remarkable efficiency. Nathan's leadership of the manufacturing transition demonstrated consummate professionalism, focusing exclusively on operational integration and knowledge transfer without reference to personal history. His expertise proved invaluable in navigating complex technical and cultural integration challenges, establishing production protocols that maximize the facility's capabilities for the integrated systems. 4 months into the 6-month transition period, we identified a highly qualified operations executive to assume permanent leadership of the Barcelona facility. Nathan provided comprehensive orientation and knowledge transfer, ensuring continuity, while preparing for his departure as originally committed. His contributions throughout this process reflected genuine commitment to the technology's successful implementation rather than personal positioning or extended engagement. When the leadership transition concluded, Nathan sent a final communication that maintained the same professional focus that had characterized our limited interaction throughout the process. Sophia, the leadership transition has been successfully completed with comprehensive knowledge transfer to Maria Vasquez. She is exceptionally well qualified to lead the facility's ongoing operations in service of the integrated technology deployment. Working with the combined Rivatec Quantum technical teams has been professionally satisfying, particularly seeing the integrated systems advancing toward market deployment with such promising capabilities. The strategic vision you established for this partnership has been validated through each development milestone. As discussed at the outset, my role concludes with this transition. I've accepted a position with an electric vehicle manufacturer in Northern Europe beginning next month, continuing my focus on manufacturing operations in an entirely separate market segment. I wish you and Rivatech continued success in bringing this transformative technology to market. Regards, Nathan. The message represented appropriate conclusion to a limited professional interaction that had served legitimate business purposes while maintaining proper boundaries throughout. His contributions had provided genuine value during a critical strategic juncture, while his consistent professionalism had enabled effective collaboration despite our complicated personal history. My response maintained the same appropriate parameters. Nathan, thank you for your effective leadership throughout the facility transition. Your manufacturing expertise and commitment to comprehensive knowledge transfer have established strong foundation for the integrated technology production. Maria's qualifications and preparation position the Barcelona facility for successful ongoing operations, with production capacity aligned to the partnership's market deployment timeline. I wish you success in your new position. Regards, Sophia. With this exchange, our limited professional reconnection concluded as it had begun, focused on specific business objectives, maintained within appropriate boundaries, and ultimately serving the strategic interests of both organizations without unnecessary personal complications. The following week brought exciting validation of our strategic direction when initial market testing of the integrated systems demonstrated performance, metrics exceeding even our optimistic projections. The technology partnership preserved through our innovative restructuring approach was delivering precisely the competitive advantage we had anticipated, with accelerated timeline enabled by the dedicated manufacturing capacity we had secured. During the executive team meeting reviewing these results, I found myself reflecting on the remarkable journey that had brought us to this point. What had begun as awkward intersection of past and present, Nathan's unexpected application, had ultimately facilitated strategic opportunity that strengthened Rivatech's market position, while demonstrating how completely I had transcended that earlier chapter of my life. The woman who had once been abandoned while pregnant had become a CEO whose strategic decisions shaped industry evolution. The struggling startup dismissed as unlikely to succeed had become an enterprise whose partnership was worth restructuring entire companies to preserve. The personal disappointment that might have derailed less determined individuals had become foundation for unprecedented professional achievement and meaningful leadership. This transformation represented the most profound form of success. Not merely financial accomplishment or market position, but fundamental personal growth that enabled facing complex challenges with strategic clarity rather than emotional reactivity. The capacity to engage effectively with complicated history when business circumstances required it demonstrated integration rather than compartmentalization, strength derived from experience rather than limitation imposed by the past. As our meeting concluded with clear direction established for the technology's market expansion, I appreciated anew how completely adversity can become advantage when approached with resilience, strategic vision, and unwavering determination. The journey from abandoned, expectant mother to industry-leading CEO had not occurred despite the challenges encountered, but partially because of them, each obstacle strengthening the capacity for innovative thinking and decisive leadership that now defined both my personal identity and Rivatech's corporate culture. In this light, Nathan's brief reappearance had provided unexpected gift, confirmation of how thoroughly I had transformed potential devastation into extraordinary achievement, creating success beyond what either of us could have imagined when our paths had diverged 5 years earlier. The contrast between the vulnerable woman he had abandoned and the composed executive who had navigated his re-entry with strategic clarity represented the most meaningful measure of the journey traveled between those 2 points in time. The successful integration of the Barcelona facility and the promising market testing of our combined technologies had positioned Rivatech for unprecedented growth. By the following spring, our partnership with Quantum had established new industry benchmarks for autonomous supply chain management, with implementation requests exceeding our production capacity despite the expanded manufacturing capabilities. This success attracted attention beyond our immediate market sector. In April, I received an unexpected email from the organizers of the Global Innovation Summit, the most prestigious gathering of technology leaders and investors in the industry. The message was brief but consequential. The Summit Committee requests your participation as featured keynote speaker, addressing transformative integration, building cross-sector technologies for autonomous business systems. Your pioneering work with the Rivatech Quantum Partnership represents precisely the innovative leadership our global audience seeks to understand. The invitation represented significant recognition. Unlike many industry conferences where speaking slots could be secured through sponsorship, the summit's keynote was reserved for genuine innovation leaders whose work was reshaping technological and business landscapes. Previous speakers included founders of transformative companies like SpaceX, pioneers of revolutionary technologies like CRISPR gene editing, and visionaries who had fundamentally altered how entire industries functioned. After consulting with our communications team about strategic implications, I accepted the invitation. Though I had spoken at numerous industry events, this platform offered unprecedented opportunity to position Rivatech's vision for supply chain transformation before the global technology community. Preparation for the address became a meaningful, reflective process. Working with our leadership team to distill the fundamental principles that had guided our company's evolution, I found myself examining not just the technical innovations we had pioneered, but the underlying philosophy that distinguished our approach from conventional industry practices. A month before the summit, as we were finalizing the presentation framework, I received another communication from the organizers. We're structuring the keynote as a focused dialogue followed by broader audience engagement. For the dialogue component, we typically pair the featured speaker with a relevant industry counterpart. Given your work with quantum mobility, we've invited Adrienne Carvalho to join you for this segment. Please confirm this pairing meets your approval. The structure made strategic sense. Adrienne's perspective would complement mine, demonstrating how different organizations with distinct capabilities could create integrated solutions exceeding what either could develop independently. I confirmed the arrangement immediately, appreciating the opportunity to showcase our successful partnership. 2 weeks before the event, a follow-up message arrived with logistical details and session framework. The final paragraph contained unexpected information. For the audience engagement portion following your keynote dialogue with Adrienne Carvalho, we've assembled a reactor panel of industry leaders who will explore broader implications of your integrated technology approach. Confirmed panelists include Hiroshi Tanaka, Yamato Motors, Elizabeth Chen, Axiom Technologies, and Nathan Whitfield, Volvo Electric Mobility Division. Nathan's inclusion on the panel created an unanticipated dimension to the upcoming presentation. While our limited professional interaction during the Barcelona transition had remained appropriately bounded, this public forum presented different considerations. The panel format would necessarily involve responding to his questions alongside those from other industry leaders, creating potential for personal complexity in a very public setting. After careful consideration, I decided against requesting any changes to the panel composition. Nathan's current position with a major European manufacturer made his inclusion professionally legitimate. More importantly, requesting his removal would suggest discomfort or unresolved issues incompatible with the composed leadership presence I had established. The situation presented not a problem to avoid, but another opportunity to demonstrate how completely I had transcended that earlier chapter of my life. As the summit approached, my preparation expanded to include potential questions from all panelists, including Nathan. His current role focused on manufacturing automation for electric vehicle production, a related but distinct application of autonomous systems technology. His perspective would likely emphasize production considerations rather than supply chain optimization, creating legitimate professional dialogue without inappropriate personal dimensions. The summit itself was held at a magnificent lakeside convention center in Geneva, gathering technology leaders and investors from across the global innovation ecosystem. The morning of my keynote, I arrived early to review the stage setup and technical arrangements, professional focus, helping manage the natural tension that preceded such high-profile presentations. The session began with the summit director's introduction, highlighting Rivatech's journey from specialized supply chain software provider to integrated autonomous systems pioneer. As I took the stage alongside Adrian, the audience of nearly 2,000 industry leaders and investors represented an unprecedented platform for positioning our vision of transformed supply chain management. The dialogue format proved immediately engaging, with Adrian and I exchanging perspectives on how our partnership had evolved from initial technological compatibility assessment to integrated systems deployment. We addressed both technical challenges and strategic considerations, emphasizing how traditional industry boundaries had constrained innovation that became possible through cross-sector collaboration. The most valuable breakthroughs often occur at intersections between established domains, I explained in response to the moderator's question about innovation catalysts. Quantum's expertise in autonomous navigation and Rivatech's supply chain optimization systems had developed in parallel without recognizing their complementary capabilities. Bringing these technologies together created possibilities neither organization had identified independently. Adrienne built on this theme. This partnership demonstrated how integration across traditional industry boundaries can accelerate innovation beyond what sequential development within established categories might achieve. The resulting systems don't merely improve existing processes, they fundamentally transform how supply chains function, shifting from reactive management to predictive orchestration. As the dialogue portion concluded to enthusiastic audience response, the moderator introduced the reactor panel. Nathan appeared alongside the other industry leaders, his professional demeanor appropriately focused on the technological discussion, rather than our personal history. Seated at the panel table with microphone before him, he presented the same composed presence that had characterized our limited interaction during the Barcelona transition. The panel discussion began with broad exploration of how integrated autonomous systems might transform different industry sectors. Hiroshi Tanaka described Yamato Motor's implementation experience with our combined technologies, highlighting efficiency improvements exceeding initial projections. Elizabeth Chen acknowledged how Axiom had initially underestimated the strategic significance of our partnership, focused too narrowly on component technologies rather than integrated capabilities. When the moderator directed the first question to Nathan, I maintained relaxed attentiveness, neither avoiding eye contact nor demonstrating undue interest, the same professional engagement I showed all panelists. From manufacturing automation perspective, Nathan began, the Rivatech Quantum integration demonstrates something critical about technological evolution. Traditionally, production systems and supply chain management developed as separate domains with limited integration. This partnership illustrates how artificial those boundaries have become as autonomous systems evolve. His observation was substantive and professionally relevant, focusing entirely on technological implications without reference to our shared history. As the discussion continued, Nathan contributed several additional insights regarding implementation challenges and production scalability considerations, maintaining consistent focus on technological and operational dimensions rather than personal connections. Near the session's conclusion, the moderator posed a forward-looking question to the panel. What broader lessons might other technology sectors learn from this successful integration across traditional domain boundaries? When Nathan received the microphone, his response demonstrated unexpected depth. Beyond specific technological integration, this partnership illustrates something fundamental about innovation itself. The most significant breakthroughs often require recognizing value in unexpected connections. seeing complementary capabilities where conventional thinking perceives only separate domains. He paused briefly before continuing. What Rivatech and quantum accomplished together represents more than technical compatibility. It demonstrates the importance of leadership that can envision integration possibilities beyond established patterns, maintaining strategic clarity while navigating the complexity inherent in transformative innovation. Though his comments contained no explicit personal reference, the emphasis on leadership qualities and navigating complexity carried subtle recognition of the broader journey Rivatech had traveled, from specialized software provider to industry transforming innovator, guided by vision that had repeatedly transcended conventional limitations. As the session concluded with audience questions addressing both technical implementations and strategic implications, I found myself appreciating the unexpected dimensions this public interaction had revealed. Nathan had contributed substantive, professional perspective without introducing inappropriate personal elements, demonstrating the same mature boundaries that had characterized our limited interaction during the Barcelona transition. More significantly, his commentary on innovation leadership, seeing possibilities beyond established patterns while maintaining strategic clarity through complexity, represented genuine recognition of what Rivatech had accomplished under my high direction. Without explicit personal acknowledgement that would have been inappropriate in this forum, he had nevertheless conveyed professional respect for the transformation journey that had carried both me and the company far beyond the circumstances of our earlier connection. Following the session, numerous attendees approached for follow-up discussions regarding potential implementations and partnership opportunities. The keynote had successfully positioned Rivatech's integrated approach before the global innovation community, creating valuable visibility that would accelerate our market expansion and technology development. During the networking reception that evening, Nathan and I briefly encountered each other among the circulating attendees. The interaction was appropriately professional, no different from dozens of similar conversations with industry colleagues. Throughout the event, the audience response to your keynote was impressive, he observed. The integration vision you've established has clearly captured significant market interest. The technology's capabilities speak for themselves, I replied. The implementation results demonstrate transformative potential across multiple sectors. Indeed. He glanced toward a group of manufacturing executives signaling interest in speaking with him. If you'll excuse me, I should connect with the Siemens delegation regarding their automation questions. This brief exchange, cordial, bounded, entirely professional, represented another small confirmation of how completely we had both moved beyond our earlier connection. The woman leading one of the industry's most innovative companies, and the manufacturing executive contributing to electric vehicle production, shared no lingering awkwardness or unresolved tension, merely appropriate professional recognition in a context where our current roles had momentarily intersected. Later that evening, as I reviewed notes from numerous productive conversations initiated by the keynote, I reflected on how this very public interaction had provided another opportunity to appreciate the journey traveled since Nathan's departure, 5 years earlier. The contrast between the uncertain entrepreneur he had abandoned and the confident industry leader addressing the Global Innovation Summit couldn't have been more profound. That transformation had occurred not despite the challenges encountered, but through meeting them with unwavering determination and strategic vision. Each obstacle overcome had contributed to developing the leadership capabilities now recognized at the industry's most prestigious gathering. Each difficulty navigated had strengthened the capacity for innovative thinking that distinguished Rivatech's approach to technological integration. The summit had provided global platform for showcasing not just our technological innovations, but the leadership philosophy that had guided their development, seeing possibilities beyond conventional limitations, maintaining strategic clarity through complexity, and recognizing value in connections others had overlooked. These principles had emerged through necessity during Rivatech's early struggles, but had evolved into distinctive strengths that now defined our market leadership. as I prepared notes for our executive team summarizing partnership opportunities. Emerging from the summit discussions, I appreciated anew how completely perceived limitations can transform into unexpected advantages when approached with resilience and strategic creativity. The journey from struggling entrepreneur to recognized innovation leader had not followed any conventional career trajectory, but had instead created an entirely new path defined by the unique challenges encountered and overcome. My keynote presentation had emphasized how technological breakthroughs often emerge at unexpected intersections between established domains. My own professional evolution had followed similar pattern, finding unprecedented success not by conforming to conventional expectations but by transforming apparent obstacles into catalysts for innovative thinking and determined leadership. This perspective brought new appreciation for the entire journey, including the difficult beginning that had initially seemed devastating interruption, but had ultimately provided foundation for extraordinary achievement. Without those early challenges, Rivatech might have developed along conventional paths, rather than forging the distinctive approach to innovation now recognized as industry transforming. Nathan's presence at the summit had provided unexpected opportunity to recognize this complete journey, not through personal reconciliation or emotional resolution, but through professional context that highlighted the remarkable distance traveled between those earlier circumstances and current reality. The composed executive addressing global innovation leaders shared nothing with the vulnerable entrepreneur he had abandoned except the determined spirit that had transformed potential devastation into extraordinary success. As Geneva's lights glittered across the lake outside my hotel window, I completed my summary notes with renewed appreciation for how completely challenges can become catalysts when approached with unwavering determination and strategic vision. The recognition received at the summit represented not mere professional accomplishment, but validation of a fundamental principle that had guided my entire journey. True success emerges not from avoiding obstacles, but from transforming them into foundation for achievement beyond what conventional paths might have permitted. This understanding represented perhaps the most valuable insight emerging from Nathan's unexpected reappearance in my professional sphere. Not reconciliation with the past, but profound appreciation for how completely that past had been transformed into foundation for extraordinary present and unlimited future possibilities. The Global Innovation Summit catalyzed remarkable momentum for Rivatech. Our visibility among international technology leaders generated partnership inquiries across multiple sectors, each recognizing how our integrated approach to autonomous systems could transform their specific operational challenges. The months following Geneva became a carefully managed balance of strategic opportunity assessment and focused implementation, with selected partners whose needs aligned with our development roadmap. By late summer, we had established formal collaborations with 3 major manufacturing conglomerates, each implementing our integrated technologies within different contexts: automotive component distribution, pharmaceutical supply chain management, and precision electronics manufacturing. These diverse applications demonstrated the platform's adaptability while providing valuable data for ongoing system refinement. The success attracted increasing media attention, with technology publications highlighting Rivatech's evolution, from specialized software provider to industry-transforming innovator. Several profiles focused specifically on my leadership journey, characterizing the company's development as reflection of a distinctive vision that consistently identified integration possibilities others had overlooked. This heightened visibility brought an unexpected communication in September, an email from the Technology Leadership Foundation, organizers of the prestigious Innovation Vanguard Conference. The foundation invites you to participate in our Visionary Voices panel at the upcoming Innovation Vanguard gathering in Singapore. This invitation-only event brings together 30 transformative technology leaders for candid dialogue about future innovation trajectories. Your pioneering work integrating autonomous systems across traditional boundaries represents precisely the cross-domain perspective our discussions require. The Innovation Vanguard differed fundamentally from standard industry conferences. Rather than presentations to large audiences, it featured intimate structured dialogues among carefully selected participants, founders and leaders of organizations creating category-defining technologies across diverse sectors. Discussions occurred without media presence, allowing unusually candid exchange regarding both technical challenges and strategic perspectives that might reshape entire industries. After consulting with our leadership team regarding potential value and timing considerations, I accepted the invitation. The gathering would provide unique opportunity for substantive engagement with peers navigating similar technological frontiers, potentially catalyzing partnerships that might accelerate our development roadmap while positioning Rivatech within the most innovative segment of the global technology ecosystem. The preliminary materials arrived 2 weeks later, outlining the 3-day program and participant profiles. The Visionary Voices panel would feature 5 leaders whose work transcended traditional domain boundaries. The founder of a computational biology platform revolutionizing drug discovery, the architect of an AI system transforming climate modeling, the creator of an advanced materials company bridging aerospace and medical applications, the pioneer of quantum computing algorithms for financial systems, and myself, representing autonomous systems integration across supply chain and manufacturing. Contexts: as I reviewed the complete participant list, an unexpected name appeared among the 30 selected attendees: Nathan Whitfield, now identified as Vice President of Autonomous Production Systems at Volvo Electric Mobility. His inclusion made professional sense given his current role with a major manufacturer implementing advanced automation systems. The focused nature of the gathering and structured dialogue format minimized potential awkwardness, while the significant professional evolution we had both demonstrated during the Global Innovation Summit suggested capacity for productive engagement without inappropriate personal dimensions. The Innovation Vanguard took place at a secluded resort on Singapore's Sentosa Island, providing privacy for the confidential discussions while accommodating the security requirements of participants leading organizations with significant market impact. The welcome reception the evening before formal sessions began allowed attendees to establish initial connections within the carefully curated group. As I circulated among the gathering, engaging in preliminary conversations with several participants whose work intersected with Rivatech's development focus, I eventually encountered Nathan among a small group discussing manufacturing automation challenges. Our interaction maintained the same professional parameters established during the summit: cordial acknowledgement without either artificial avoidance or undue engagement. "Sophia," he greeted me with appropriate professional recognition. "The pharmaceutical implementation case study your team presented at the European Technology Review demonstrated impressive adaptation of your platform to regulated production environments. The validation protocols presented interesting integration challenges," I acknowledged. "The regulatory documentation requirements created valuable architecture modifications that have enhanced our compliance frameworks across all implementations." This brief exchange, focused entirely on legitimate professional topics without reference to our personal history, established appropriate tone for potential subsequent interaction during the structured sessions. We had both demonstrated capacity for mature engagement within professional context, neither avoiding substantive discussion nor introducing inappropriate personal dimensions. The following morning sessions began with the Visionary Voices panel, moderated by the Foundation's research director with focus on identifying patterns across diverse innovation trajectories. Each participant briefly outlined their organization's evolution before engaging in structured dialogue regarding common challenges and emerging possibilities at the intersections between traditional domains. When the moderator directed initial discussion toward organizational culture aspects of cross-domain innovation, I shared Rivatech's experience developing integration frameworks that bridged traditional operational boundaries. Successful integration requires more than technical compatibility, I explained. It demands cultural approaches that value perspective diversity and collaborative problem-solving above domain-specific expertise alone. Our most significant breakthroughs have emerged from creating environments where different knowledge frameworks interact without hierarchical constraints. The computational biology founder built on this observation, describing similar experiences bridging biological sciences and computational methods. The challenge isn't merely technical translation between disciplines but creating genuine synthesis where new conceptual frameworks can emerge. This requires leadership that values constructive cognitive friction rather than enforcing premature consensus. As the dialogue continued exploring how innovative organizations cultivate environments that enable cross-domain breakthroughs, Nathan contributed perspective from manufacturing contexts that demonstrated thoughtful engagement with the discussion's substantive dimensions. Traditional manufacturing cultures emphasize domain stability, consistent processes producing predictable outcomes, he observed. Autonomous systems integration requires fundamentally different approach, creating production environments that value adaptive learning above rigid process adherence. This cultural shift often proves more challenging than the technical implementation itself. Throughout the 90-minute session, our panel explored numerous dimensions of cross-domain innovation, from technical integration challenges to governance, structures that enable effective collaboration across traditional boundaries. The dialogue remained substantively focused and professionally stimulating, with each participant contributing distinct perspective while identifying common patterns that transcended specific application contexts. Following the panel, the gathering divided into smaller working groups addressing particular innovation challenges. I participated in discussions regarding regulatory frameworks for autonomous systems, while Nathan joined a separate group focused on manufacturing implementation considerations. This natural division of focus areas maintained appropriate separation throughout the day's structured sessions. The evening program included informal dinner groupings with deliberately diverse composition, creating opportunities for connection across different specialist domains. I found myself at a table with 6 other participants, including the quantum computing pioneer, 2 biotech founders, a sustainable energy innovator, a financial systems architect, and Nathan. The conversation flowed naturally across various innovation challenges, with each participant contributing perspective from their specific domain, while identifying common patterns in how transformative technologies navigate adoption resistance and implementation barriers. The discussion remained professionally stimulating and personally comfortable, with neither artificial constraints nor inappropriate familiarity. During dessert, the conversation turned toward how various organizations maintained strategic focus while navigating rapidly evolving technology landscapes. The financial systems architect described his company's quarterly destination mapping process that balanced long-term vision with adaptive implementation pathways. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.